Chapter 1. Goodbye, Daddy. Truly, when I was very young, way back in the 50s, I believed all of life would be like one long and perfect summer day. After all, it did start out that way. There's not much I can say about our earliest childhood except that it was very good, and for that I should be everlastingly grateful. We weren't rich, we weren't poor. If we lacked some necessity, I couldn't name it. If we had luxuries, I couldn't name those either, without comparing what we had to what others had, and nobody had more or less in our middle-class neighborhood. In other words, short and simple, we were just ordinary run-of-the-mill children.
Hi.
Hey.
So, that was Edmund Kemper.
That was a COED hugger right there.
Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Natalie.
Hey, Mikey.
Hey, Mikey.
Hello, Carl and Steve.
Hi, Steve.
And Carl.
Who's Carl?
The camera monkey.
Oh!
Hello, hello, Calvin.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Cosmo.
Hey, Cosmo.
How are you? Hello to Carl and Steve. Hello. All right, guys, please share out. Oh, I didn't put gold right here.
You mean your golden?
My golden lip didn't come out today.
Didn't come out today. Tara's feeling hurt now. Oh, sorry.
How dare you?
Oh.
All right, so you guys, we are talking about Edmund Kemper.
Did you see the title of the show
Oh,
today?
audio's low.
Is that better? Is that better?
Can you hear us better now?
Hello.
I'll hopefully be joining you.
I don't know if they're turn this. Can you guys hear us?
Hello, hello, hello. Nope.
How about now? Hey, hey, hey. What's going on, Cosmo?
We sound far away?
Is that better?
What the hell? Why? Okay, the back. It's the back. It's the
I'm trying to turn it.
the other knob.
No, that's... Is that better?
Can you guys hear us better?
Your mic neighbor weird?
Obviously, that's not what you meant to say.
Hold on. Watch out.
Hold on, guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Play it really fast.
We're going to play a commercial. We haven't seen this one for a while.
It's that time, kids. Hold on to your heads. Join Psychomantium 13. Each week for thrills, chills, and a horrific good time. Don't lose your head. Join Psychomantium 13 and enter the weird.
Can you hear us now?
Hello? Hello? hear us now?
Well, I'm just waiting to see if...
Can you hear us now? Is that better?
Don't move it from the first time I said it.
There we go. It's going to be like that. There's going to be some white noise. Okay. I don't know.
It's about the same. Great.
Is that better?
What about that one?
That's the one.
That might be what we need.
No, that's it. Just turn some. The headphones on.
We can hear you. It's a little bit... Frank is a little bit quiet. Is that better?
Is that better? Oh, wait a second. How about that? Is that better? Testing, testing, testing. This is...
It's not working. I don't know why.
How about that? Okay,
There's a delay. Remember that.
I don't know.
A bit better.
Okay, there we go. Cool.
Sorry, y'all. Okay, so let's just get started on this. Edmund Kemper. Turn the AC off. It's grabbing that noise, so it's grabbing from these sides. Edmund Kemper. He was born Edmund Emil Kemper III on December 18th, 1948. He's an American serial killer, rapist, they're trying to say cannibal, and necrophile.
He was a cannibal.
I guess he was.
He did try it out.
Who murdered 10 people,
That got it. Yeah, okay, so it was a white noise.
including his paternal grandparents and his mother. He is noted for his height. He is 6'9", and for his high intellect, his IQ is around 145. He was nicknamed the COED Killer because most of his victims were female college students.
Or the COED Hugger. I like COED Hugger a lot better.
The Candyman.
Candyman.
A big guy, yeah.
Yeah, he was 6'9", wasn't
He is.
6'7".
6'9".
Yeah.
You said was, I said is.
Well, yeah. Well, the crazy thing is, he was only like 300-something pounds when he was doing this, too. For 6'9", that's actually not that big.
A good weight.
That's a good weight.
So, he was born in California. He had a very troubled upbringing. His parents divorced when he was a child, and he moved to Montana with his abusive mother before returning to California, where he ended up murdering his grandparents on his dad's side when he was 15. He was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic and sentenced to Atascadero State Hospital for the criminally insane juveniles, but then that was actually overturned. He was released at the age of 21 after convincing the psychiatrist he was rehabilitated. He was regarded as non-threatening by his future victims.
Mm-hmm.
He targeted specifically young female hitchhikers during his killing spree, luring them into his vehicle and driving them into secluded areas where he would murder them before taking their corpses back to his home to be decapitated, dismembered, and violated. Hence, Irrumatio.
Hence the title, Irrumatio, a coming-of-age story for Edmund Kemper.
Kemper then murdered his mother and one of her friends before turning himself into the authorities. He was found sane and competent to stand trial and found guilty.
I don't think he ever went for the insanity plea
No,
at
he
all.
didn't, but they did.
Yeah.
So Kemper requested the death penalty for his crimes, but he didn't get it. Capital punishment was suspended in California at the time, and he insisted that he receive 8 concurrent life sentences. Since then, he has been incarcerated at the California Medical Facility.
And he's never... I think a couple times he said he's thought about trying to get out, but he knew what would happen if
No,
he
he's
did.
asked a few times, and those few times he's asked, they have denied parole.
Yeah. He knows exactly what would happen if he...
With some spaghetti.
Spaghetti. Hey, you know, like a spaghetti.
The Candyman. Yeah. Well, mostly towards women. And you'll hear why.
Well, he never had a horrible temper actually at all towards men in any way, shape, or form.
It's weird, but some of the stuff I almost don't blame him on.
Yeah.
I know it's weird.
Well, it's just
a form of empathy, I guess.
It's the odd... Well, he's a straight up... He is
Me, I have a form of empathy for him. Go ahead.
So he has like these... He is the straight up king of all sociopaths. He is very charismatic. So charismatic that he just loves to talk to people. Like on top of that, and he can win you over. He wins women over and all this other stuff. So.
Well, so Edmund Emil Kemper III was born in Burbank on December 18th, 1948. He was the middle child and only son to Clarnell Elizabeth Kemper, maiden name, stage, and Edmund Emil Kemper II. Edmund II was a World War II veteran who, after the war, tested nuclear weapons in the Pacific Proving Grounds before returning to California, where he worked as an electrician.
He also, I think one they are leaving out here, he did tell stories about his time in World War II to Edmund Kemper and stuff like that.
So, Clarnell often complained about Emil's menial electrician job, and later said suicide missions in wartime and the atomic bomb testing were nothing compared to living with... he later said suicide missions in wartime and the atomic bomb testing were nothing compared to living with her.
Steve the Cat. His dad created Godzilla.
Yes.
Yes.
And Fluffosaurus. Remember Fluffosaurus. So, weighing 13 pounds as a newborn. Jesus.
Oh, he took half his mother out with him.
No wonder she's so angry. Just joking.
Ruined my vagina, Edmund Kemper.
Someone got split from the V to the A. Woo!
I shall never be another woman again after you, Kemper.
He was a head taller than his peers by the age of 4. Early on, he exhibited antisocial behavior, such as cruelty to animals.
So, he broke the mold, yes. Yes, Stephen P. Kitty Cat.
Quite literally.
What was the old name from Family Guy?
What?
Chris dragged half of me when I came out. They don't expect me to live past 35.
They don't expect me to live past 40. So, at the age of 10, he buried a cat alive, his pet cat. Once it died, he dug it up, decapitated it, and mounted its head on a spike.
Now, when he did this, mind you, this is how good of a sociopath this kid is. He was able to talk his way out of it.
I'm about to get there. Because of that. Going where you're going here. Kemper later stated that he derived pleasure from successfully lying to his family.
Oh, yeah.
About killing the cat.
He was literally able to say, I was just interested in what it looked like. See what it looked like his head on the stick.
Yeah.
So.
At the age of 13, he killed another family cat when he perceived it to be favoring his younger sister, Aline Lee Kemper, over him. He kept pieces of it in his closet until his mom found them. Kemper had a dark fantasy life. He performed rites with his younger sister's dolls that culminated in his removing their heads and hands. On one occasion, when his elder sister, Susan Huey Kemper, teased him and asked him why he did not try to kiss his teacher, he replied, "If I kiss her, I'd have to kill her first."
You know, okay, let's go back here real fast. He's a little boy with dolls. That's what little boys do. I'm sorry.
I decapitated all my dolls.
Huh?
I decapitated all my dolls.
Yeah, that's just what kids do with Barbie dolls. I think that part right there it doesn't really matter. Every kid does that.
I always pulled the heads off my Barbies.
But the one thing we're going to get here too, they did play a game where he liked to pretend he was in a gas chamber and stuff like that, and they would pretend that they were basically executing him and executing each other and stuff like that.
So he also recalled that as a young boy, he would sneak out of his house and, armed with his father's bayonet, go to his second-grade teacher's house and watch her through the windows.
Mm-hmm.
He stated in later interviews that some of his favorite games to play as a child were gas chamber and electric chair, in which he asked his younger sister to tie him up and flip an imaginary switch. He would then tumble over and writhe on the floor, pretending that he was being executed by gas inhalation or electric shock.
You know what's really crazy here?
It's kind of funny, actually.
It's not exactly. It's the fascination with death is the not normal part of this. Because if he never killed anybody, this would be like, oh, we just did this stupid game when we were kids, and no one would care about this stuff. But the fact that he actually acted out on things and actually murdered women and stuff like that, this is the reason why people are actually saying, no, this is actually pretty serious here. The only major part that's actually That's funny.
Sorry, go ahead.
I lost my train of thought.
So did I. So I used to blow up my toys with firecrackers. Everybody swapped Barbie's head with G.I. Joe. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, you know what? Kind of going where you were going. Shit, I played war games all the time as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, we would beat the living crap out of each other and play like we were dying. So, like, and I'm not... Okay, I'm not normal, but I'm not a psychopath.
Oh, I know.
Oof. So, I mean, hell, okay, we had a teacher in, I want to say it was 5th or 6th grade, and we were asked to come up with skits, right? And me and my group, which was mostly guys, came up with a war skit, and we were, like, killing each other in front of the class. It was great. Got in a little bit of trouble to, yeah. So, yeah. He also had a close to death experience when he was a child. Once when when his older sister tried to push him in front of a train. Another time when she successfully pushed him into the deep end of the pool, where he almost drowned. Kemper had a close relationship with his father and was devastated when his parents separated in 1957, causing him to be raised by Clarnell in Helena, Montana. He had a severely dysfunctional relationship with his mother, who was a neurotic, domineering alcoholic, who would frequently belittle him, humiliate him, and abuse him. Clarnell often made her son sleep in a locked basement because she feared that he would harm his sisters.
Was it his harm? She had this weird fear that he would sexually assault his sisters.
Yeah, and the interesting part is she created the monster.
Oh, she did. She very much so. She would never locked him in that basement, never treated him differently than the sisters. Mm-hmm. He would just have been
weird boy.
A weird kid, a weird adult.
Yeah.
So.
I don't remember playing guillotine when I was a kid. I guess I lost my head. So, she would regularly mock him for his large size, as at the age of 15 he was already 6'4". She would call him a real weirdo. She also refused to show him affection out of fear that it would turn him gay.
What?
And told him that he reminded her of his father, and no woman would ever love him. Kemper later described her as a sick, angry woman, and it has been postulated that he suffered from borderline personality disorder, or that she suffered, rather.
Well, it runs in the family.
At the age of 14, Kemper ran away from home and attempted to reconcile with his father in Van Nuys, California. Once there, he learned that his father had remarried and had a stepson. Kemper stayed with his father for a short time until the elder Kemper sent him to live with his grandparents, who lived on a ranch in the mountains in North Fork, California.
So the issue, though, here that the reason why he sent him away wasn't just because, like, oh my God, I don't want to take care of you. Mm-hmm. It was he started practically stalking his stepmother in the house.
Yeah.
He started. He would watch her, and mind you, at this time he was already far bigger than all of them.
Oh yeah.
And it was practically like looking around the corner, staring at her, watching her, everything like that. So.
Oh, definitely. So, Kemper hated living in North Fork. He described his grandfather as senile, and said his grandmother was constantly emasculating him and his grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen P. Kitty Cat came up with a good point. He was so big, people didn't think they could hurt him, so they pushed him around. He seemed to be everybody's punching bag, Mikey says.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I'm really detached from some of my family members. Yeah. Same. So, the first murders. Let's get into that. On August 27th, 1964, at the age of 15, Kemper was sitting in the kitchen table with his grandmother, Maud Matilda Huey Kemper, when they had an argument. Kemper got enraged and stormed off, retrieved a rifle from his grandfather's room, from his room that his grandfather had given him for hunting. The rifle had been confiscated because he used it to shoot animals.
Well, it was given to him for hunting, but
Isn't
I don't think he was using it to shoot it like for hunting. I think he was just using it to murder animals.
Yeah. He then re-entered the kitchen, fatally shot his grandmother in the head before firing twice more into her back. His grandmother's last words were, "Oh, you better not be shooting the birds again."
Yep.
Some accounts mention that she also suffered multiple post-mortem stab wounds with a kitchen knife. When Kemper's grandpa, who was Edmund Kemper I, returned from the grocery store, Kemper went outside and fatally shot him in the driveway next to his car. He was unsure what to do next, so he phoned his mother and told him to contact the police. Now, one of the things that I want to... Oh, here it is. It's in here. Kemper called the police and waited to be taken into custody. After his arrest, Kemper said that he just wanted to see what it felt like to kill Grandma. And the whole reason why he killed his grandpa was because he didn't want his grandpa to know what he did.
That's a weird form of...
Didn't want him to be without his wife and know that he killed him.
You know, people actually say that serial killers and stuff like that don't have empathy. They actually do.
It's just misplaced.
It's not just misplaced. It's also a way how they manipulate people and stuff like that. They use their empathy. They can tell. They can read people, and that's how they really manipulate them and stuff like that.
Was there a Dewey and Louie Kemper?
Exactly.
Oh, my head. Hurts to laugh. So he testified that he killed his grandfather so he would not find out his wife was dead, and that he would be angry with Kemper for what he'd done. Psychiatrist Donald Lund, who interviewed Kemper during adulthood, wrote, "In his way, he had avenged the rejection of both his father and his mother." Kemper's crimes were deemed incomprehensible for a 15-year-old to commit, and the court psychiatrist diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia.
Which was a misdiagnosis.
Then sent him to Atascadero Hospital, a maximum security facility that houses mentally ill convicts.
Schizophrenia was something they just passed out like candy back then because they just didn't understand why a 15-year-old would do that. What does Steve the Cat say?
Many years ago, I used to study martial arts. The advice I received, which was true, is that it is much safer for adult men to spar with other adult men. If you spar with women or kids, they will not hold back because you're bigger than they are, and they don't think they can hurt you. For the record, they can hurt you.
Yeah.
I know. I would spar against adults as a kid, and I bit them and kicked them and everything. I didn't hold back.
You can't help but feel a bit bad for Kemper as a young child. Oh yeah.
And I do.
Honestly, I kind of feel. This is the reason why I think I say he's the king of all sociopaths. You kind of feel bad for him in adulthood too.
Mm-hmm.
He knowingly did what he did, and then he gave himself up. He knew enough. Even he would go out and trial runs to see if he could live in society without killing, and he did a couple times. We'll get to it, but he picked women up and actually drove them to their destinations.
Well, it was also when they would say, "Are you a cop?" Or go, "Ha ha ha ha, you're a serial killer, aren't you?"
It was,
and he would intentionally just drop them off.
Yeah.
Prove he wasn't.
It was that, but the big part was he was trying his hardest to not do certain things. But then again, too, he also did trial runs where he picked people up and to figure out how he's going to kill them and stuff like that, and how to do things.
Mm-hmm. So, at Atascadero, California Youth Authority psychiatrists and social workers disagreed with the court psychiatrist's diagnoses. Other reports state that Kemper showed no flight of ideas, no interference with thought, no expression of delusions or hallucinations, and no evidence of bizarre thinking. They also observed him to be intelligent and introspective. Initial testing measured his IQ at 136, over 2 standard deviations above average. He was re-diagnosed with a less severe condition, personality trait, disturbance, passive-aggressive type. Later, passive-aggressive? That was not passive-aggressive. Later on, in his time at Atascadero, Kemper was given another IQ test, which gave a higher result of 145. Which, by the way, he does test even higher than that later on in life. But the average comes out to 145. His moral compass was a bit confused, like two people in one body.
Yeah.
I can agree with that. Excuse me. Kemper endeared himself to a psychiatrist by being a model prisoner and was trained to administer psychiatric tests to other inmates. One of his psychiatrists later said he was a very good worker, and this is not typical of a sociopath. He really took pride in his work.
Like, that's... there's hard-working sociopaths out there. You know, it's not like they're all, like, just... Not every the vast majority of sociopaths are not killers in any way, shape, or form. They're just people.
So, Kemper became part of the JCs, which is a United States Junior Chamber. And it's an international branch, by the way. It's for model organization, career-minded men, that kind of thing.
He became part of this while he was in high school.
Well, he was in Atascadero.
In Atascadero.
He developed some new tests and new scales on the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, specifically on overt hostility scale, during his work with Atascadero psychiatrists. After his second arrest, Kemper said that being able to understand how these tests functioned allowed him to manipulate his psychiatrist, and admitted that he learned a lot from the sex offenders to whom he administered tests. For example, they told him to avoid leaving witnesses. It was best to kill the woman after raping her.
That's one of the worst things you can do is send a person who has mental issues like this to a jail, opposed to actually just send him to a psych ward.
And Stephen P. Kitty Cat said 2 standard deviations means his IQ was higher than at least 97.5% of everybody else's.
Mm-hmm.
That puts it a little bit more in perspective. We didn't even state that part last time.
Yeah, he was.
He is
super intelligent.
Now, mind you, he is currently still in prison, and he had a stroke in 2017. So his facilities aren't exactly what they were, but he's still super smart.
He is.
So, release and time between murders. On December 18th, 1969, his 21st birthday, Kemper was released on parole from Atascadero. Against the recommendations of the psychiatrist at the hospital, he was released into the care of his mother, Clarnell, who had remarried, taken the surname Stanberg, and then divorced again. In Aptos, a short drive from where she worked as an administrative assistant at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Kemper later demonstrated further to a psychiatrist that he was rehabilitated, and on November 29th, 1972, his juvenile record was permanently expunged.
That's crazy. The other psychiatrists literally begged. Oh well, they actually begged the state, do not release this man to the care of his mother.
Yeah.
And that's what they did.
They said this would not be a good idea. It will cause issues. Yeah. And they're like, whatever. So, the last report from his probation psychiatrist read, if I were to see this patient without having any history available or getting any history from him, I would think that we're dealing with a very well-adjusted young man who had initiative, intelligence, and who was free of any psychiatric illnesses. It is my opinion that he has made very excellent response to the years of treatment and rehabilitation. I would see no psychiatric reason to consider him to be any danger to himself or to any member of society. And since it may allow him more freedom as an adult to develop his potential, I would consider it reasonable to have a permanent expunction of his juvenile records. While staying with his mother, Kemper attended community college in accordance with his parole requirements and had hoped he would become a police officer, though he was rejected because of his size. At the time
he was trying for
of his release from Atascadero, Kemper stood at 6'9", which led to his nickname Big Ed.
Yeah, he was trying for the CHP, really. It wasn't just a police officer. In the CHP, you can't be that big being a CHP. If he would have went for just regular cop, he probably got it. He probably would have got it.
So, Natalie asks, from a paranormal standpoint, has anyone ever suggested he might be possessed? I know it's an odd question, but his behavior is so both sides of the scale. You know, demon possession.
Yeah.
It's just something to look into.
Well, I mean, it's right in front of you guys right now.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never actually heard anyone actually consider that. because he's such an intelligent person and did everything, I hate to say it this way, did everything the right way. They weren't going to catch him. They were not going. He turned himself in. And I'm pretty sure he probably could have got away with murdering his mother, too. He just turned himself in.
Tell us, Hexxus.
Tell us.
You'd have to ask from the meatbag side of things. Yeah. So, Kemper maintained relationships with the Santa Cruz police officers despite his rejection to join the force, and became a self-described friendly nuisance at the bar called the Jury Room, a popular hangout for local law enforcement officers.
It's not there.
It's not there anymore. Yeah.
The place, the building is still there, but it's not there. It's something else.
Hey, Odd Mother, I just literally watched The Conjuring Part 3 right before this broadcast. So, excuse me. Kemper worked a series of menial jobs before gaining employment with the State of California Division of Highways, now known as the California Department of Transportation. During this time, his relationship with Clarnell remained toxic and hostile, the two having frequent arguments that their neighbors often overheard. Kemper later described the arguments that he had with his mother around this time, stating the following: "My mother and I started right in on horrendous battles, just horrible battles, violent and vicious. I've never been in such a vicious verbal battle with anyone. It would go to fists with a man, but this was my mother, and I couldn't stand the thought of my mother and I doing these things. She insisted on it, and just over stupid things. I remember one roof raiser was over whether I should have my teeth cleaned." When he had saved enough money, Kemper moved out to live with a friend in Alameda, California. There, he still complained of being unable to get away from his mother because she regularly phoned him and paid him surprise visits. He often had financial difficulties, which resulted in his frequently returning to his mother's apartment in Aptos. At a Santa Cruz Beach, Kemper met a student from Turlock High School, to whom he became engaged in March of '73. The engagement was broken off after Kemper's second arrest, and his fiance's parents requested her name not be revealed to the public.
Well, I hope it was broken off.
The same year that he began working for the Highway Division, Kemper was hit by a car while riding a motorcycle that he had recently purchased. His arm was badly injured in the crash, and he received $15,000, which would be about $90,000 in 2019, which adjusted for, which would be adjusted for inflation, rather. A settlement in a civil lawsuit that he filed against the car's driver. He was driving around in the 1969 Ford Galaxy he bought with part of his settlement money. He noticed a large number of young women hitchhiking and began storing plastic bags, knives, blankets, handcuffs, and everything in his car. He then began picking up young women and peacefully letting them go. According to Kemper, he picked up around 150 such hitchhikers before he felt the homicidal sexual urges, which he called little zapples.
Little zapples.
And began acting on them.
Or irrimatio.
So we're going to go to commercial real fast. We'll be right back. If I can find it.
This is Mikey from Out of the Ordinary, and you're watching PBDC TV.
Oh, hi! First thing in the morning, when I'm listening to music and getting a little bit of time for some creepy research, I'm always representing with my PBDC merch. What a better way to have a cup of coffee in the morning.
Don't forget to check out our other cool merch at rootsbleedred.com. That's rootsbleedred.com.
This is Professor Edgar Fluffosaurus from Spooky Tales with Steve the Cat, and when I'm not hosting Monster Chat or knocking down small Japanese cities, I'm watching PBDC TV. Now back to the show.
Hey!
Fluffosaurus just yelled, "Hey everybody, my commercial is on." He's such a diva.
I didn't just rip my face off and ate a whole bunch of drinks of beer.
So, between May 1972 and April 73, Kemper killed 8 people. He would pick up female students who were hitchhiking and take them to isolated areas where he would shoot, stab, smother, or strangle them. He would then take their bodies back to his home where he would decapitate them and perform Irrumatio on their severed heads. He had sexual intercourse with their corpses and then dismembered them. Now, mind you, he never has had sex with a living woman.
No, I think he actually did. His ex-fiance.
Maybe. He has stated that he just can't do it.
Oh. Never mind, I'm wrong.
So, the other thing that I wanted to mention is his very first victim. He accidentally brushed against her. He brushed against her breast and apologized in the process. He apologized. He was killing her.
So there was 2 other
With spaghetti.
there's 2 other serial killers actually acted during Kemper, and they actually got a lot of the stuff. Hi, Susan.
Hi,
They
Susan.
actually got a lot of their crimes mixed up with each other. The main one was Herbert Mullen.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was he actually trained. I think was it Herbert Mullen? They actually were in jail together when they actually got caught.
Mm-hmm. So during his 11th month murder spree, he killed 5 college students, 1 high school student, his mother, and his mother's best friend. Kemper has stated in interviews that he often searched for victims after having arguments with his mother, and that she refused to introduce him to women attending the university where she worked. He recalled.
So he took actions
He
into his
recalled
own hand.
she would say, "You're just like your father. You don't deserve to get to know them." Psychiatrist and Kemper himself would espouse the belief that the young women are surrogates for his ultimate target, which was his mother. Hey, Suzanne.
Thank
you so much. Really appreciate it. So, Mary Ann Pesci, and Anita Lucchesa. On May 7th, 1972, Kemper was driving in Berkeley, California when he picked up 2 18-year-old hitchhiking students from Fresno State, Mary Ann and Anita. The pretense of taking them to Stanford was, how he got them in there. After driving for an hour, he managed to reach a secluded wooded area near Alameda, which he was familiar with from working on the highway department, without alerting the passengers that he had changed directions from where they wanted to go. It was there that he handcuffed Pesci. Is it Pesci or Pesci?
I think it's Pesci.
Pesci? Yep. And locked Lucchesa in the trunk, then stabbed and strangled Pesci to death. I would just say Marianne. Subsequently killing Anita in a similar manner. Kemper later confessed that while handcuffing Marianne, he brushed the back of his hand against one of her breasts and it embarrassed him. He said, "Whoops, I'm sorry," after grazing her breast, despite murdering her minutes later.
Yeah. Well,
Kemper,
he also too he didn't want her friend to was locked in the trunk. He killed her first. He didn't want her friend to actually see that he killed her. He actually felt bad in some way for it. Which also could have just been him talking it up to the police, basically saying, "Oh, I don't want him to feel bad," which, you know.
Well, Kemper put both of the women's bodies in the trunk after this, and returned them to his apartment. He was stopped on the way by the police officer for having a broken taillight, but the officer did not detect the corpses in the car. Kemper's roommate was not home, so he took the bodies into the apartment where he photographed and had intercourse with the naked corpses before dismembering them. He then put the body parts into plastic bags, which he later abandoned near Loma Prieta Mountain. Before disposing of Marianne and Anita's severed heads in a ravine, Kemper engaged in Irrumatio with both of them. In August of that year, Marianne's skull was found in Loma Prieta Mountain. An extensive search failed to turn up the rest of her body, or a trace of Anita.
Good night, Susan! And Richard says, so he's a polite killer.
Great seeing you too. Have a good night. Yeah, he's a polite killer. Hey, Richard!
Yeah. Hey, Richard!
How are you?
I don't know if he's a polite killer. I just think he's... I think what he liked to do was talk himself up when it came to police and stuff like that. When it came to stuff like this, and to kind of basically like say, well, I didn't want to do this, but I did it anyway, you know. And it wasn't exactly my fault that these girls were in my car or whatnot, you know.
So, Aiko Ku. On the evening of September 14th, 1972, Kemper picked up 15-year-old dance student Aiko Ku, who had decided to hitchhike to a dance class after missing her bus. He again drove to a remote area where he pulled a gun on her before accidentally locking himself out of his car.
This is the best.
However, he was able to talk Aiko into not only letting him back inside, but handing him the gun.
She had the gun trained on him. She had it on him, and he sweet-talked her. This is why I say that Kemper is the king of sociopaths. Of all sociopaths. He had the gun, she had the gun on him.
Locked the car.
The car was locked. She could have shot him and been done with it. But no, he was able to talk her to opening the door up and giving the gun back to him. Mm-hmm. That's king of sociopaths.
Natalie,
right
what? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, once he got back inside the car, he proceeded to choke her unconscious, rape her, and kill her.
So
which, by the way, is switched. He did not rape her first, he killed her, and then raped her.
Okay. All right.
Because of a statement that we know he made. When they're alive, their bodies are theirs. I will not touch them. They are not mine. Once they're dead, they're no longer there. They're mine.
And Irrumatio.
And Irrumatio happens.
Proceed.
And for those of you who were not here for the last...
For those of you who don't understand what Irrumatio is...
Irrumatio is forced fellatio.
Google Bang Bros.
Oh my God.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Irrumatio is forced fellatio, in case you guys didn't know that.
Well, it's not just forced fellatio. More than likely, the bottom part of the neck with the opening, that's where he did his business.
But Irrumatio,
the term is just forced.
Definition is forced fellatio.
But with him,
Excuse me.
I think one of the things they knew that he did, it wasn't just in the mouth, it was right there where you severed the neck and you had the throat and the larynx, all that stuff right there. That's where he did it.
Sorry, all I could think of was fuck you in the neck. Kemper subsequently packed her body into the trunk of his car, went to a nearby bar to have a few drinks, and then returned to his apartment. He later confessed that after exiting the bar, he opened his trunk and admired his catch, like a fisherman.
Yep.
Back at his apartment, he had sexual intercourse with the corpse, then dismembered and disposed of the remains in a similar manner to his previous two victims.
I think it's the next one. That he actually, I don't think he gets to it, but he actually, with people walking around him, in the back of his car, he actually just dismembers a body. He cuts the head off in broad daylight, right in front of his apartment, in his trunk of his car.
So, Aiko's mother called the police to report the disappearance of her daughter and put up hundreds of flyers asking for information, but she did not receive any responses regarding her daughter's location or status. Cindy Shaw. On January 7, 1973, Kemper, who had moved back in with his mother, was driving around Cabrillo College campus when he picked up 18-year-old student Cynthia Ann Shaw, known as Cindy. He drove to a wooded area and fatally shot her with a .22. He then placed her body in the trunk of his car and drove to his mother's house, where he kept her body hidden in the closet in his room overnight. When his mother left for work the next morning, he had sexual intercourse and removed the bullet from the corpse.
It wasn't just his corpse. He did it with every corpse that he shot with the .22.
Well, we're gonna get there. Yeah. Then dismembered and decapitated her in his mother's bathtub. Kemper kept Shaw's severed head for days, regularly engaging in Irrumatio with it.
Yeah, that makes
Then buried it in his mother's garden, facing upward towards her bedroom. After his arrest, he stated that he did this because his mother always wanted people to look up at her. Over the course of the following few weeks, all except her head and right hand were discovered and pieced together like a macabre jigsaw puzzle. A pathologist determined that Cindy had been cut into pieces with a power saw. Yeah, I bet there were all kinds of blood evidence in that trunk. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would seem like it would start to stink after a while. You'd think so.
The head or the body?
Yeah. And the head, even after a day, it should start stinking a little.
It would. It wouldn't be as pronounced and stuff like that. It takes a little bit for it really to start smelling. So, and he disposed of the body and all that stuff before it really got that bad.
So, Rosalind Thorpe and Allison Leo. On February 5th, 1973, after a heated argument with his mother, Kemper left the house in search of possible victims. With heightened suspicion of a serial killer preying on hitchhikers in the Santa Cruz area, students were advised to accept rides only from cars with university stickers on them.
And guess where his mother worked?
Kemper had obtained such a sticker
From his mother.
as his mother worked at the University of Santa Cruz, or University of California, UC Santa Cruz. He encountered 23-year-old Rosalind Heather Thorpe and 20-year-old Alice Helen Leo on the UCSC campus. According to Kemper, Thorpe entered his car first, reassuring Leo to also enter. He first fatally shot Thorpe and then Leo with his .22 caliber and wrapped their bodies in blankets. Kemper again brought his victims back to his mother's house. This time, he beheaded them in his car and carried the headless corpses into his mother's house to have sexual intercourse with them.
Fucking nuts. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but wow.
He then dismembered the bodies, removed the bullets to prevent identification, and discarded their remains the next morning. Some remains were found at Eden Canyon a week later, and more were found near Highway 1 in March. When questioned in an interview as to why he decapitated his victims, he explained, "The head trip fantasies were a bit like a trophy. You know, the head is where everything is at, the brain, the eyes, the mouth. That's the person. I remember being told as a kid, you cut off the head, the body dies. The body is nothing after the head is cut off. Well, that's not quite true. There's a lot left in the girl's body without the head." And here is the piece de resistance. This is what he was going after.
Yep.
Clarnell Kemper, Sally Howlett, sorry. On April 20th, 1973, after coming home from a party, 72-year-old Clarnell awakened, 52-year-old rather, awakened her son with her arrival. While sitting in her bed reading a book, she noticed Kemper enter her room and said to him, "I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now." Kemper replied, "No, good night."
It wasn't nonchalant like that, actually. When he actually was saying in the interview, he was actually tearing up. because he knew right then and there when she did that to him, he's all, it's over with. I'm doing this now.
Yeah. Damn. Yeah, it would stink after a while. The blood would.
Yeah, but he was good at cleaning. He cleaned it up.
So, give me a moment here. Gotta readjust. He then waited for her to fall asleep, where he snuck back into her room to bludgeon her with a claw hammer and slit her throat with a penknife. He then decapitated her and engaged in Irrumatio with her severed head.
Yep.
Then used it as a dartboard. Kemper stated that he put her head on a shelf and screamed at it for an hour and threw darts at it, and ultimately smashed her face in. He also cut out her tongue and larynx and put them in the garbage disposal. However, the garbage disposal could not break down the tough vocal cords and ejected the tissue back into the sink. That seemed appropriate, he said.
In death.
As much as she bitched and screamed and yelled at me over so many years, even in death, she had to have the last word.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Kemper then hid his mother's corpse in a closet and went to drink at a nearby bar. Upon his return, he invited his mother's best friend, 59-year-old Sarah Taylor, known as Sally Hallett, over to the house to have a drink and watch a movie. When Hallett arrived, Kemper strangled her to death to create a cover story that his mother and Hallett had gone away together on vacation. He subsequently put Hallett's corpse in a closet, obscured any outward signs of a disturbance, and left a note to the police. And it read, approximately 5:15 a.m. Saturday, no need for her to suffer any more at the hands of this horrible, murderous butcher. It was quick, asleep, the way I wanted it, not sloppy and incomplete. Gents. Just a lack of time. Got things to do. Afterwards, Kemper fled the scene. He drove nonstop to Pueblo, Colorado, taking caffeine pills to stay awake for the 1,000-mile journey.
He literally thought that the police were on his heels the entire time.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he had major mommy issues. He really thought that the police were like chasing him down. They knew it was him, that he was the one killing all the people around there. And really, the police had 2 other serial killers to worry about at this time, and they didn't know.
They could have attributed it to them.
They actually did, especially to Herbert Mullen.
Yeah.
And they thought they had no idea it was him. And actually, when he called in when he got to Pueblo, Colorado, and he called in, they thought he was joking. It was his friend. One of his cops on the line was one of his friends, and they thought, oh, it's just Big Ed, Bumble Butt, just making a joke here again. And then, like, it took a couple times for him to finally take him seriously. He gave himself up to the police in Colorado. They brought him back, and then when they actually went to look at the mother's house, they're like, oh my God.
Well, he had 3 guns and hundreds of rounds of ammo in his car. He believed that he was the target of a manhunt, an active manhunt, rather. After not hearing any news on the radio about the murders of his mother and Hallett when he arrived in Pueblo, he found a phone booth and called the police. He confessed to the murders of his mother and Hallett, but the police did not take his call seriously and told him to call back at a later time. Several hours later, Kemper called again, asking to speak to an officer he personally knew. He confessed to that officer of killing his mother and Hallett, then waited for the police to arrive to take him into custody, where he also confessed to the murders of 6 students. When asked in a later interview why he turned himself in, Kemper said the original purpose was gone. It wasn't serving any physical or real emotional purpose. It was just a pure waste of time. Emotionally, I couldn't handle it much longer. Toward the end there, I started feeling the folly of the whole damn thing. At the point of near exhaustion, near collapse, I just said, to hell with it, and called it all off. The trial. Gosh, you know what? We're just going to go a little bit over.
Want to go over? Do you want to?
You know what?
Let's just go over.
We're going to go a little bit over because there's not enough for another feed right now.
Yeah.
All right, so Kemper was indicted on 8 counts of first-degree murder on May 7th, 1973. He was assigned the Chief Public Defender of Santa Cruz County, Attorney Jim Jackson. Due to Kemper's explicit and detailed confession, his counsel's only option was to plead not guilty by reason of insanity to the charges. Kemper twice tried to commit suicide in custody. His trial went ahead on October 23rd, 1973. 3 court-appointed psychiatrists found Kemper to be legally sane.
Richard, it's your show. You can do whatever you want. darn Skippy, Richard.
Damn right. Three court-appointed psychiatrists found Kemper to be legally sane. One of the psychiatrists, Dr. Joel Fort, investigated his juvenile records and the diagnosis that he was once psychotic. Fort also interviewed Kemper, including under truth serum, and relayed to the court that Kemper had engaged in cannibalism, alleging that he sliced flesh from the legs of his victims, then cooked and consumed these strips of flesh in a casserole. As to if that's true, we don't know.
More than likely it is.
So
He already went into the taboo of killing and necrophilia. It's not far-fetched for him to be like, I might as well at least try this.
yeah, it's still so weird, so different than the ones that just go to
Well,
berserker mode.
he actually probably was entering his cool-off period here. He could have cooled off, went away from his mother, not killed his mother, or got away with it. And if he didn't turn himself in, the next time around would have been his berserk mode, where he just went nuts. Which could have taken anywhere, it could have been almost immediately after this, or it could have been years later.
So, nevertheless, Fort determined that Kemper was fully cognizant in each case and stated that Kemper enjoyed the prospect of the infamy associated with being labeled a murderer. Kemper later recanted the confession of cannibalism. California used the... What? It's M''N''N.
Naughton?
M'Naughton standard?
Naughton standard.
M'Naughton standard, which held that for a defendant to establish a defense on the ground of insanity, it must be clearly proved that at the time of committing the act, the party accused was laboring under a deficit of reason from disease of mind and not to know the nature and the quality of the act he was doing, or if he did know it, that he did not know what he was doing was wrong. Kemper appeared to have known that the nature of his acts were wrong, and he had shown signs of malice aforethought. On December 1st, Kemper took the stand. November 1st. Sorry. God. On November 1st, Kemper took the stand. He testified that he killed his victims because he wanted them for himself, like possessions, and attempted to convince the jury that he was insane based on the reasoning that his actions could have been committed only by someone with an aberrant mind. He said that two beings inhabited his body, and that when the killer personality took over, it was kind of a blackout. On November 8, 1973, the six-man, six-woman jury deliberated for 5 hours before declaring Kemper sane and guilty on all counts. He asked for the death penalty, requesting death by torture. However, with a moratorium placed on capital punishment by the Supreme Court of California, he instead received 7 years to life for each count, which these terms to be served concurrently, and was sentenced to the California Medical Facility.
Which is the reason why he's able to have parole and stuff like that.
But he's never going to get it.
Oh, no. I think even now he denies it, too. After he tried to get it a couple times, but he knew if he ever went out, he would do it again. He knew.
Like I said, he did have a stroke in 2017.
Yeah.
So
it's still, you wouldn't want this guy.
Oh, I know. In the California Medical Facility, Kemper was incarcerated in the same prison block as some other notorious criminals, such as Herbert Mullen and Charles Manson. Kemper showed particular disdain for Mullen, who committed his murders at the same time and in the same area as Kemper. He described Mullen as just a cold-blooded killer, killing everybody he saw for no good reason. Kemper manipulated and physically intimidated Mullen, who was only about 5'9". He was a full foot taller.
Steve, Sirhan did get out.
He did get out.
He's out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think Sirhan was he held here in California?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Kemper stated that Mullen had a habit of singing and bothering people when they were trying to watch TV. So I threw water on him to shut him up. Then, when he was a good boy, I'd give him peanuts. Herbie liked peanuts. That was effective because pretty soon he asked permission to sing. That's called behavior modification treatment.
Super intelligent.
Kemper remains among the general population in prison and is considered a model prisoner. He was in charge of scheduling other inmates' appointments with psychiatrists and was an accomplished craftsman of ceramic cups. He was also a prolific reader of audiobooks for the blind, which we opened with. And, excuse me, the governor did grant it, by the way. As far as I know. A 1987 Los Angeles Times article stated that he was the coordinator of the prison's program and had personally spent over 5,000 hours narrating books with several hundred completed recordings to his name. He was retired from these positions in 2015 after experiencing a stroke and was declared medically disabled. He received his first rules violation, it was 2015 because 2016, for failing to provide a urine sample. And that was the first time he had any kind of violation ever. While in prison, Kemper has participated in a number of interviews, including a segment in the 82 documentary The Killing of America, as well as an appearance in the 84 documentary Murder, No Apparent Motive. His interviews have contributed to understanding the mind of serial killers. FBI profiler John Douglas described Kemper as among the brightest prison inmates he interviewed, and capable of rare insight for a violent criminal. Kemper is forthcoming about the nature of his crimes and has stated that he participated in the interviews to save others like himself from killing. At the end of his Murder No Apparent Motive interview, he said, "There's somebody out there that is watching this and hasn't done that, hasn't killed people and wants to, and rages inside and struggles with that feeling, or is so sure they have it under control. They need to talk to somebody about it. Trust somebody enough to sit down and talk about something that isn't a crime. Thinking that way isn't a crime. Doing it isn't just a crime, it's a horrible thing. It doesn't know when to quit, and it can't be stopped easily once it starts." He also conducted an interview with French writer Stéphane Bourgin in 1991. Kemper was first eligible for parole in 1979. He was denied parole that year, as well as at the parole hearings in 80, 81, and 82. He subsequently waived his right to a hearing in 85. He was denied parole at his hearing in 88, where he said, "Society is not ready in any shape or form for me. I can't fault them for that." He was denied again in 91 and in 94. He then waived his right to a hearing in 97 and 2002. He attended the next hearing in 2007, where he again denied parole. Prosecutor Aaron Simmons said, "We don't care how much of a model prisoner he is because of the enormity of his crimes." Kemper waived his rights to a hearing again in 2012. He was denied parole again in 2017, and he is eligible again in 2024.
I think that's it.
I'll go through the pop culture stuff real fast. It's really short. In pop culture, Kemper has influenced many works of film and literature, alongside Ed Gein, were used as inspiration for the character of Buffalo Bill in Thomas Harris's Silence of the Lambs. Like Kemper, Bill fatally shoots his grandparents as a teenager. Dean Koontz cited Kemper as an inspiration for the character of Edgar Bess in his 96 novel Intensity, which is so good. The character Patrick Bateman in the 2000 film of American Psycho mistakenly attributes a quote by Kemper to Ed Gein, saying, "You know what Ed Gein said about women? When I see a pretty girl walking down the street, I think two things. One part of me wants to take her out, talk to her, be real nice and sweet and treat her right. The other part wonders what her head would look like on a stick."
Richard, it's mostly documentaries and true crime novels, like actual novels about Edmund Kemper. That's pretty much it. Nothing major.
Well,
That's what we're getting into right here. There's like a lot of authors use Kemper to model their serial killers after him.
Well,
But-
there was a direct-to-video horror film loosely based on him.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, it was called
Oh,
Kemper, the Co-Ed Killer.
it came out in 2008. I gotta
Yeah.
see this now.
It
I
came
didn't even
out
know about
2008.
this.
In 2012, French author Marc Dugain published a novel, Avenue of the Giants, about Kemper. Kemper was portrayed by 6'5" actor Cameron Britton in
And,
3 episodes of the first season of Mindhunter.
And then there's 1 or 2 episodes of the second season that he's in.
Yep.
And then the third season has been put on hiatus until every actor does whatever they're supposed to do and get back together.
Well, Britton received a nomination for the Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Drama Series because of this role, and appeared in the 5th season of 5th episode of the second season. He was really good as Kemper.
It was really good. He was actually
Oh my gosh.
he was actually too big. He wasn't as tall, but actually like weight wise he was too big to play him. But then again, to get a 6'7" guy to play Kemper, you're gonna get every one of them is gonna just be huge guys.
It worked though.
It worked.
Really
He did a good
worked.
job.
He was-
Natalie, Mindhunter is great. It's awesome. We absolutely love Mindhunter.
So Kemper has also been the subject of multiple books, including Edmund Kemper,
Yeah.
The True Story of the Co-Ed Killer, Edmund Kemper, The True Story of the Brutal Co-Ed Butcher, and The Co-Ed Killer, a study of the murders, mutilations, and matricide of Edmund Kemper III, among others. Extracts from Kemper's interviews have been used in numerous songs, including Love Hate by Dystopia, Abomination Unseen by Devourment, Forever by the Berserker, Severed Head by Suicide Commando, and Crave by Optimum Wound Profile. He was discussed in many songs, such as Edmund Kemper Had a Horrible Temper by Macabre, Fortress by System of a Down, Temper Temper Mr. Kemper by the Celibate Rifles, what a band name, Murder by Seabound, California Ed Kemper by Church of Misery, and Edmund Temper by Amigo the Devil. Alright guys,
That's it.
I think we did better this time.
Except for the audio mess up at the start.
Sorry. But we managed to get through everything.
Yeah, we did.
So,
The last time it took us 2 episodes. Alright,
alright guys, thank
It's
you for
hot.
joining us tonight. It is pretty damn hot
I'm
in
going to turn our
here.
AC back on.
And, I need food.
Yeah.
I know, I'm surprised Cannibal Corpse isn't in there.
Yeah. Well, everything that Cannibal Corpse actually does is mostly just fictional. There's not a lot of stuff. With the exception of, who was a serial killer that he said, they opened it in Tomb of the Mutilated, a song with it. It's I cut her from her neck down to her anus, and then I cut out the vagina, and I ate it. I can't remember which serial killer that was.
Thank you guys.
But, yeah.
Well, have a wonderful night, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
I don't set the world higher. I don't want more of a